Welcome to Legends in Leadership, brought to you by ISF and the Carrington Group. Legends in Leadership is an inspirational podcast featuring the stories of leaders who are making a difference. Our goal is to inspire you with the stories of leaders who come from humble beginnings, overcome challenges, and ultimately rise up to make a difference in people's lives.
Well, good morning, folks. This is Tyler Tallman. I want to welcome you to Legends in Leadership. I'm a family officer with the Carrington Group, and my co-hosts on today's podcast are Dr. Blair Ritchie, who's the Executive Director of the International Student Foundation, and Jason Smith, who's also a family officer and a partner of mine at the Carrington Group. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tom.
Morning.
So we like to kick off each of our shows with a little bit of leadership trivia. We're fascinated by the stories of leaders who, like us, come from humble beginnings and then rise up as a leader to make a difference in people's lives. So, Dr. Blair, what do you got teed up for us today for our leadership trivia?
All right. Today's legendary leader was born into poverty in rural Mississippi to a teenage single mother and later raised in the inner city of Milwaukee. She experienced considerable hardship during her childhood, saying she was raped at the age of 9 and became pregnant at the age of 14. Her son died in infancy. She has parlayed an award-winning TV talk show into an empire that has made her the richest African American of the 20th century, the greatest black philanthropist in American history, and in the eyes of many, one of the most influential women in the world. Do you know who this legend in leadership is? I'll be back at the end of the program to give you the answer.
All I know is if anybody is listening, they should know the answer to that, right, Jason? All right. Well, we are really excited about today's guest, Bart McCollum. Bart is the President and COO of Ameriflex, which is one of the nation's largest independent administrators of consumer-driven health plans. Bart is responsible in his day-to-day job for overseeing all aspects of business operations, product development, strategic planning, employee relations, business integration, compliance, and technology at Ameriflex. He's an expert both from a legal and operational perspective in consumer-directed healthcare products. Bart began his career at UMB Financial Corporation in Kansas City, where he served as an assistant vice president for the company's institutional fixed income group. Bart, you graduated from Washington University in St. Louis, and he earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in finance, psychology, and philosophy. He also earned a Juris Doctor degree from Tulane Law School and is admitted to practice law in Texas and Missouri. So, Bart, great to have you on this show, and we're really excited about sharing a little bit of your story with our listening audience.
It's great to be here. I'm flattered that you guys invited me.
Well, I wanted to kick off a little bit and talk about Bart. My wife, Katie, and I, we have the pleasure of calling Bart and his wife, Erin, our friends, and we also have had the pleasure of serving on the board of directors for the International Student Foundation with them over the past year or so. Bart, both you and Erin have been incredibly generous in supporting ISF, as well as Ameriflex being one of our corporate sponsors here at our 10th annual gala. All of this has helped us change the world one foster care student at a time. So I wanted to kick things off and talk a little bit about that. You and Erin, of course, have the ability to choose from so many charities in DFW, and you chose ISF. So how has ISF captured your hearts and really inspired you to get involved and make a difference in these kids' lives?
Yeah, well, I mean, when I first learned about ISF, I sort of kind of inverted it a little bit. I was sort of thinking, like, who wouldn't want to get on board with this? There's this tremendous need for, kids that age out of the foster system, many of whom enroll in college, but they don't really have any support system. They've come from very, very, just shocking backgrounds. Mm-hmm. And so there's just this unmet need out there. And so it's such an easy thing to relate to and want to be a part of. Who wouldn't want to contribute to that? So that was really kind of, that was the extent of the analysis was, oh my gosh, like I wasn't even aware this was such a huge problem, and it is, and we need to get as many resources behind it as we possibly can.
Well, it's just been awesome having you guys as a part of the board, and you guys have made just a huge impact already in the past year, and we're looking forward to continuing the journey forward and helping these kids. So let's dive into the show a little bit. I want to rewind the tape a little bit and go back to your childhood. Where'd you grow up, and talk about some of the folks that were influential in your life growing up that made a difference.
Sure. Grew up right here in Dallas, Texas. And moved away after high school, kind of bounced around the country for a bit, and probably 12, 13 years, and then came back about 7 or 8 years ago. Probably, I was influenced by everybody like anyone. My dad was a huge influence over me, still is to this day. Very strong personality. Probably would be okay with me saying this, spent time in his childhood in foster care. Probably didn't have the best overall kind of childhood, although he wouldn't say that. And so, a lot of inspiration there. Didn't have probably the traditional model of fatherhood, and at least in terms of leadership for him. Still ended up being a man of character, and I had a great experience. And so he really, kind of cobbled it together from people that he looked up to, found inspiration wherever he could. He was in the military. He's a retired U.S. Marine. There's a whole bunch of generals alive and dead that he has tremendous amount of respect for. Some locally that he still has very strong relationships with. And so I think he took a lot of his inspiration and teachings from those folks who have led under very, very trying circumstances. And so that's sort of infused into me a little bit, and just the general idea of finding inspiration and wisdom wherever you can get it. That's kind of been one of my principles, and, kind of one of the things I try to impart on other people as well. You have something to learn from everybody.
Absolutely. So anything specifically that you can remember during those times, or any nuggets of wisdom that he provided that you go, man, I still think about that all the time in my leadership journey?
Yeah, the number one kind of thing, I guess, is just perspective, right? Perspective and humility. And it's really sort of like, okay, I have my whatever situation I'm in right now, whatever state of mind I'm in right now, everybody is fighting a war that you don't know about. And so, just thinking about, well, what has this person accomplished, and what has that person accomplished, and under what circumstances, it really sort of kind of creates a context for you where you can sort of get out of your own head and start thinking about, the problem may not be as big as you think it is. And so it's really kind of along those lines, I would say.
Awesome. So you're the proud dad of two little girls. You're married to a strong leader, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
I do, actually.
Good answer there, Mark.
There you go. So what have you learned from this journey, being a dad, being married to a strong leader? What have you learned from them so far that have served you well?
Yeah, well, when you have, so I've got two young kids. I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, two girls. And what's interesting to me is how much is kind of just prepackaged in there, like from birth, just in terms of how we're programmed. So you start to see things emerge really, really early, like in terms of personality traits. Kids are very, very selfish, and they need to be, right? That's sort of your number one instinct. And so it takes a long time to sort of develop the superego and all these other things that you have to sort of contend with the world when you're with other people. But when you're a small child, like, you need to make sure that you get food. And so you can kind of see these sort of basic instincts that all of us have within us really, really early on. And that's really interesting to see, because those don't actually leave you. When you grow up, you may be able to suppress those or hide them, but they're all ultimately there. And one of the things I like to think about is, there's a sort of argument about rationality versus not rational. So economists see the world as sort of everybody's a rational agent. And that, behavioral science has sort of come along and said, no, people are not rational at all. Well, the truth is, people are completely rational. In the moment, people are making the best decision for themselves within the context of whatever emotions they're feeling, whatever biases they have, whatever their interest may be, whether you know it or not. They're making a rational decision. And so the really amazing thing about kids is kids don't have, they're completely transparent. So you can see that every single day, and it really just gives you some really interesting perspective into human nature. As far as my wife, we're both lawyers. And And, you know, I don't know how much people buy into this Myers-Briggs stuff. She's an ENTJ. I'm an INTJ, more introverted. So the general dynamic is she's gonna really kind of dominate me. And so it's really just having an understanding of where the strengths and weaknesses are, and realizing that this is a person that you have to have healthy conflict with, and you figure that piece out, and it actually goes pretty smoothly. So, yeah.
Good stuff. So let's dive a little bit, Bart, into your business and your professional career. So you graduate school, you end up in Kansas City, and your first job, from what I understand, was in the finance space, and then now you've made this journey into the healthcare space. So talk a little bit about your business and professional journey, and how you've led your way into what you're doing today.
Sure. Well, I mean, sort of like a lot of people, mostly by accident. You know, where I ended up today, really, really happy where I am, but there was no grand plan. And so, yeah, I started off on a bond desk after going to law school, which is kind of silly. You know, I think I was maybe smart enough to know that I didn't want to practice law, or maybe that I wasn't going to be smart enough to practice law and be really, really good at it and dedicated to it. But, you know, ended up making a left turn in 2008. A friend of mine, close friend from college, fraternity brother of mine, actually CEO of Ameriflex. He's my boss. He and I started a company together with a couple of other people. It was a kind of a healthcare startup company. And that was kind of our dream, was to do that. And he's very entrepreneurial. I'm not really as entrepreneurial. I'm more operational, but I was able to sort of add value. And this opportunity came along where we could spend more time working on that, basically. But the caveat was that we were going to manage this other company called Ameriflex. And, you know, we ended up in the situation that we were in because we didn't know any better. We thought, oh, this will be easy. Managing a company, running a company. The guy that owned the company, really, really brilliant guy, really smart guy, super nice guy. He's like, it runs itself. He didn't actually say that. That's probably what we wanted to hear. And so, you know, we're 25, 26, 27 years old. It was three of us at the time. Walked into the door day one, 2008, and suddenly we are running a company. Like, we're managing people, we're managing projects, we're dealing with upset customers and everything that comes with that. And so it was really kind of a trial by fire thing. I mean, I'd never led anything beyond a project prior to that, and, you know, maybe did some group work in, you know, school or something. But it was really, here it is, figure it out. And you know, it's that kind of Reid Hoffman thing. Jump off a cliff and build an airplane before you hit the ground, you know, kind of situation. So the constraints of that really kind of helped us develop as leaders, because we didn't really have a choice. It was either succeed or the thing's going to blow up. So that was really, really nice. At the time, it was extremely stressful. I mean, like 100-hour weeks stressful, but I feel like we got a couple decades worth of experience, like, packaged into like the first 3 or 4 years of that. So, like, I am so thankful for that now.
So it's inevitable that there had to be some failures along that journey. So what do you consider to be one of your greatest failures or disappointments or setbacks? And what have you learned from that you're using now today in your professional career? Yeah,
the biggest thing is, you know, you come in and, you know, smart competitive people are like, you know what, I've got the answer for this, right? And so you come in with some big ideas and you're like, we're doing this. Now maybe you don't have a really good sense of, well, how do I actually implement this big idea? Oh, and is this really a good idea in the first place? And so that sort of top down, let's try this, let's spend a lot of money on this, and, you know, our natural ego will kind of be in place, and maybe we're not hearing the right feedback soon enough on it. So I think we probably spun our wheels a lot early on with things that we thought needed to be a certain way, when really maybe we were kind of directionally right, but we should have set it up to be much more sort of iterative and feedback oriented. And so that wisdom has come over time, and now we've set ourselves up to be much more, you know, let's pick some ideas, let's test them, and then we have feedback loops that come in all the time automatically, so we can be sort of tacking our way into that right direction. So it was really kind of waterfall versus agile. That was the big thing. I think if we had walked in today, you know, the company back then was a great company. It was already winning awards, but it was not prepared to scale. I think we probably could have done it twice as fast if knowing what we know today. If we walked into that same situation today. So we would have saved some time, I guess. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about scalability. I think that is always the question of any entrepreneur out there that's trying to grow a business. And so you said, hey, if we would have known what we know now, we could have scaled the business so much faster. So what do you know now that you wish you would have known that could have allowed you to scale the business in a different way?
Yeah, well, so every situation obviously is unique. And so the biggest, I guess the overall kind of theme of it is you have to create this system where you're not going to be getting, you have to be able to basically learn and adjust as quickly as possible. So you need to be creating this, let's call it an operating system, where you're getting reps. And when I talk about reps, I'm talking about experimentation, feedback, reflection. Let's try a different version of this over and over and over again. And so, taking it from, let's just say I think we walked in the door, there was probably 35 employees. Now we're about 185 employees. We've 4 or 5x'd it top line. That journey is not the same journey that it's going to take us to get from where we are now to, let's say, 500 employees. Let's say we take it to $200 million company. And one of the things I've learned sort of along this journey is every couple of years with aggressive growth, the company's going to break. Right? You're going to break something. And you have all these functions that sort of this organ system that comes together to run the organism, right? So you've got the circulatory system and you've got your nervous system. As the thing grows, those things break at different times and have to be rebuilt and reinvested in. And you don't know what order that's going to happen. You have to just set yourself up to be able to see those signals so that you can respond quickly. So I know today if we doubled the size of our company in, let's just say, 6 months, our operations would completely break. Now, if we did that over a course of 2 years, it would work beautifully. Mm-hmm. So, the overall goal is let's just use Ameriflex as an example. We want the Ameriflex of next year to be slightly better than the Ameriflex of last year. And that's all we're going for. That's our number one benchmark, is looking at ourselves in the past and are we better? And so that's kind of been the number one thing. And again, all this stuff, no idea walking in day one. It all had to be learned the hard way, unfortunately. And, and the other sort of conceit of this whole thing is that there's actually wisdom. There isn't. I mean, there's so much more to be learned about how to do this the right way and how to continue to grow it, any business really, or really any system, that, you have to be really careful to say, well, what, wisdom has come late, but it came. Yeah, some wisdom came. But, there's a lot more wisdom out there. And, I know there are, there's icebergs in front of the ship right now that I don't even see. So I got to create systems that can help me sort of identify those things, and I have to have the, presence of mind to listen, basically.
So the philosophy piece of your background is interesting to me. What do you draw from that? Maybe from the actual degree versus an overall interest in that topic, and how does that help shape your leadership style?
Yeah, and so So one of the nice things about where I went to school is you can kind of double and triple major. And so I did the finance thing to sort of make myself marketable. And then I did the philosophy thing because it was kind of interesting. The biggest thing was sort of Socratic method, right? So it's asking questions. It's getting good at asking questions and translating that into sort of like you're actually trying to accomplish something. And I'm not knocking on philosophy. It's an esoteric discipline, but it's actually really, really, I would call it applied philosophy, right? Setting yourself up to ask questions and try to open every single door, and have people and have enough trust and safety where you feel like you can engage in that conversation and something better comes out of that. Mm-hmm. So, for me, there's a sort of like dichotomy between sort of virtue ethics, philosophy, utilitarianism, and so the end justifies the means versus we're going to have a certain set of principles that we follow, regardless of what the outcome is. Those are sort of the two extremes, at least that I studied when I studied Kant and those types of philosophers. Right. Well, it's not like one is better than the other, right? You can be completely Machiavellian and do some pretty horrific things. You can also have the most amazing principles in the world, and you can completely screw things up. I mean, I think it was it Hayek that said the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I don't know. Somebody said that. The road to serfdom is paved with good intentions, something like that. So you can't be like, okay, like I have this philosophy and this is you can't have a dogma that you follow and blindly follow it. Like you have to take what works and you have to apply it, and it has to be, it's really good to be atheoretical and just take what works, apply it, experiment with it, and then just keep working, I guess is what you can say.
Yeah.
Otherwise it becomes an orthodoxy, and so philosophy kind of helps you.
Becomes a sacred cow. It can't be
becomes
challenged.
A sacred cow.
And,
yeah. Right. So you can't really, so Ayn Rand is very popular in the business world, right? Objectivism. Probably a lot of good lessons in objectivism. But it's not something that you can just, when you apply that orthodoxy, what you're essentially doing is you're saying, you know what, I'm gonna take my own judgment, and I'm going to subrogate it to this orthodoxy that exists. And when you do that, then you're not using your brain, and you're going to take a lot of shortcuts.
And you also ignore the variables of each individual situation when you're trying to apply that dogma across every individual sort of set of circumstances.
Yeah, that's right. You try to fit it. You try to pre-fit it into an ideology, and when you do that, you're going to see everything that supports that ideology, and all the stuff that disconfirms that ideology, you're going to ignore it, and you're going to have serious
the gaps
bias.
become really obvious.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Man, I'm super jazzed that we got the Road to Serfdom and Atlas Shrugged in the podcast. This is a first for the legends.
And Dr. Blair,
I'm raising the intellect level here for us, Bart.
I'm quite positive we've lost at least 90% of our viewer audience
Tyler,
in the last 5 minutes.
You totally took. I was going to say.
Let me bring it back to another part of your story that I'm intrigued by. It was you and some buds get going in something. So teams are obviously a part of your story. So talk a little bit about what it's been like in your journey, about what you've learned about leading teams and what makes your teams so effective that allows your business to grow.
Yeah. Well, so this is huge. This topic can be talked about. I mean, but way greater minds than mine can have way wiser things to say about this. But if you have, so there's some basic kind of foundational things that you have to have on a team, right? You have to have enough trust with the other members of the team where you can engage in really, really good debate, and people don't take it personally. And then you have to get the reps. So this was talking about earlier. Like, you have to have the reps where people will challenge your assumptions, and you have these difficult conversations, and you have to get really good at it. Because people arguing with you, I mean, argument can be really, really good. When somebody really cares about what you're trying to do and trying to accomplish, and they're pushing back and arguing with you, they're trying to make you better. But there's also the other kind of argument where they're, maybe they have, some other type of agenda, or they're coming after your budget, or they're coming after your job or something, and their motives may not be as pure. And so, it takes a certain level of maturity to get to the point where you're with your team and you trust them enough where when that is happening, we're all trying to accomplish the same thing. We're trying to make each other better. And you have to have that safety, and you have to have a system and incentives that sort of, make sure that perpetuates itself automatically, because you can't police it. So when it's 3 people, starting a company who are friends, you don't have to, there's no organization there, right? I mean, I was with Jeff Bezos, who says he's got the 2 pizza rule at Amazon. Any cross-functional team cannot be bigger than what 2 pizzas will feed, which I think is like 10 to 12 people or something like that. And why is that? Because, you get to 10 people, 11, 12 people, they can still self-assemble. They can build individual relationships with everybody else in that group. And we're humans. We're social animals. We're used to being in these small, roving kind of tribes, right? So when you get above 12 people, when you get to 20 people, 30, 40, 100 people, you start to have to add hierarchy, and you start to have to add structure to it. And it's necessary. Oh. But doing that is going to ensure that whatever potential is within that team, you're not going to realize 100% of it. There's always more juice you can squeeze out of that team. And so you have to do that in such a way where you have to have that structure, because not everybody's going to have a personal relationship with each other. But you have to have that underpinning of trust and reps and practice, because that's how you're going to get the most potential out of it and have the least friction, the least cross-functional friction, when you have people who have titles, people who have roles, people who don't talk to each other every single day face-to-face.
Bart, I'm curious. You're a mature leader now, and you're in your prime, or at least you're on your way to your prime.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
Or
I'm just who knows?
Yeah. So you look back. You're a fresh 20-something-year-old. You just graduated from college. And by the way, there's all this debate out there, and the millennials take it all very personally. I was actually listening to a piece from Simon Sinek this week that was talking about millennials and why there's a challenge with that. But reverse, go back to when you were 20. And now you are where you are. What was the one piece of advice that you would have given yourself then, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, I love these questions, Because then you go back and you're like, well, if I told myself that, I wouldn't have actually learned it. Like, and so, you know, like, and what, well, so the biggest thing is, so, you know, let's just assume we're in our 20s, we're competitive, we're relatively smart, you know, like we're in some place where we think we can make some impact on the world. Okay, well, how did we get there? We were in school, we probably had, you know, competitive parents, or we had competitive peers in our community or friends. And so there's this sort of like single player kind of mentality where it's like, I want to get the best grades, I want to get the best test scores, and I'm competing with other people. And so that, you have to completely get rid of that, because when you're in your 20s, if you're in, you know, you're naturally going to walk in thinking that if I'm smart, I'm really smart, I need to outthink these other people and outperform these other people. Well, that's where you start to get some problems. And that's when you start to get, you know, people not trusting each other. And so you have to, again, you have to get rid of that messiness. So people have messiness, and the larger the organization gets, the less messy people can be. You have to get secure enough in yourself to be able to set aside that and not take things personally. Because when it's all about you, and when you're competitive, if somebody challenges you on something, they're basically saying that you're wrong. That's something that you're naturally going to take personally. It takes a lot of practice and it takes a lot of maturity to get yourself out of that and be like, no, I have something to learn from this person. It takes a lot of humility to say, you know what, I have something to learn from that guy on the street that asked me for, you know, 10 cents on the way in here. Oh, I absolutely do have something to learn from that person.
Or even the boss that you absolutely could not stand, you know, in your first job. There's always something to learn from somebody, right?
Yeah. But you don't, I mean, you can understand intellectually, I can learn from everybody, but you don't actually internalize that. I mean, some people in their 20s have that wisdom and have that level of, let's just call it confidence. But ego's a problem. You know, I'm going to quote my friend Kevin Burgess, who you guys need to have on the podcast. He's an amazing leader. You know, ego, every strength is a weakness, right? So if you have too much ego, I mean, you have to have a lot of ego to get yourself into a place where you can do anything meaningful in the first place. But if you take it too far, then you're only going to associate with people that feed your ego, and that's obviously that can take you off a cliff. I mean, there's so many examples of that. Well, on the other end of the spectrum, if you're insecure, or you don't have enough ego, then you're gonna easily be persuaded to do things that you shouldn't be doing. You're gonna easily be taken advantage of. You're gonna easily be manipulated, and so, like, you know, you gotta get that dialed in, and it takes years, it takes time, it takes reps to do that. And some people do it really quickly, and some people, for whatever reason, like, it just takes a really long time. So the more reps you can get, the quicker you're going to get there. But youth is not friendly to that sort of dialing in that equation.
Good stuff. We've got just a few minutes left in the show. I want to hear a little bit about Ameriflex. So tell us, I mean, who is your ideal client? What are you guys doing at Ameriflex that makes you different and distinctive and cutting edge for that matter?
Sure. Well, I mean, you know, so the simplest way to look at it is Ameriflex, you know, we got, you know, 185 people. We come to work every single day because we want to help American families contend with the rising cost of healthcare. Again, one of the reasons I like this mission is because it's kind of similar to ISF. Everybody can relate to this. I mean, the average family medical premium, even in a sort of a group health plan, which is where, you know, 170 million Americans get their health care through their employer. That premium is now, the average premium is like $20,400 or something. That's like a used Hyundai every single year. And, you know, that cost is, you know, you're paying that cost. I mean, now your employer's going to be covering a lot of that, but that's cost that's not going into your salary. It's not going elsewhere. So we're ultimately bearing that cost. And so Ameriflex is an administrator of flexible spending accounts and health savings accounts primarily. So consumer-directed spending accounts. So these tax-advantaged accounts where you can put money into an account and you can spend it on out-of-pocket expenses. And every year, most Americans have greater out-of-pocket responsibility. So on top of that $20,000 premium, you're going to have a higher deductible. You're going to have co-insurance. You're going to have co-pays. You're going to have office visits. You're going to have sick kids. You're going to have broken bones. You're going to have all that stuff. And you're going to get tagged with bills. And so these plans are available to you. The IRS allows these things to exist. And so few people take advantage of them. And so what Ameriflex essentially does, aside from that administration, is try to make that experience as pleasant as possible, because people just aren't educated about these things and they all need to be participating in them. So we think we sit around all day long thinking about ways to make these things fun to engage with and explain to people, you're already spending this money. why not save a lot of, why not pay taxes on it, and why not come out of pocket? Because we can, again, the way that it works, people don't have to pay out of pocket. They can get reimbursed after the fact.
We could have an entire another podcast about Ameriflex and what you guys are doing in the healthcare space. Matter of fact, we probably have dozens of podcasts talking about the healthcare space. How do people find out more about Ameriflex and learn more about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way is you can probably go to our website, which is myameriflex.com. We've got social media stuff too. So there's a Facebook page and I think we're on Twitter, and we're starting to produce a little bit more kind of fun, edgy content. Consumer-directed healthcare benefits, and basically we're essentially a payments technology company. Not the sexiest thing in the world. So like engaging with people and especially sort of the participant, the end user. Our industry, most of us are bankers, we're reformed bankers, or we're reformed insurance people. These are not known historically as great consumer experience people, right? We got to make sure that the numbers balance at the end of the day. So one of the things that Ameriflex does that's unique is we've sort of broken out of that a little bit. We don't think like bankers. We don't think like insurance people or payments people. We think like consumers. And so we spend a lot of time, again, trying to make it fun, trying to gamify it, trying to allow people to take advantage and save thousands of dollars a year so they can, help pay for their kids' college books and make that rent payment and gas payments and all those other things.
Fascinating. Bart, it's been absolutely awesome having you on the show today. We like to wrap up all of our shows with one final question, and it really comes down to what is the most valuable leadership book that you've read throughout your journey that you think has had the biggest impact on you? Yeah, so I'm going to throw a curveball on this one. It's not a book; it's a podcast. Okay, I like it. Competition. So first place I think of is it's called The Knowledge Project. This guy Shane Parrish, he's this Canadian guy. He has this amazing blog called Farnham Street, and Farnham Street is actually the street that Berkshire Hathaway is headquarters on in Omaha, Nebraska. So he's a big kind of Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger guy. He has an amazing podcast because he has these amazing guests. And so I don't know if there's show notes for this, but I actually have some specific episodes that I would recommend to people if they're kind of interested in this. And they're not about leadership per se, but they're with people who are leading large things or who have led large things, and it's just the most amazing stuff ever. That's awesome, and we'll get that information, and we'll put it out through our social media pieces so that everybody can go and check that out. Very interesting. Bart, been great having you on the show and on the podcast today. We hope you had a good time. We sure did. Yeah, this was fun. Yeah. Can't thank you enough, my friend, for being with us. And before we wrap up, we got to go back over to Dr. Blair and get our leadership trivia answer. I'm telling you, if somebody doesn't get this is the easiest one we've had by far. Well, we've been getting some feedback that a couple of them have been a little harder. Okay, so, okay, all right. Thumbs it down a little bit. My question is, could it really truly be that the most influential woman in the world is the Oprah? But if not the most influential, certainly one of the most wealthy, Oprah Winfrey. Amazing story of overcoming things to and have perseverance. A lot of influence, yeah. No doubt about that. Well, folks, that's a wrap for our podcast today. On behalf of the Carrington Group, the International Student Foundation, and our special guest, Bart McCollum, this is Tyler Tolman wishing you a good day. But remember this, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, then you are a leader. Have a great week.
Legends in Leadership is brought to you by ISF and Carrington Group. ISF is committed to leadership development for aged-out foster care and orphan youth. ISF's mission is to transform these youth into tomorrow's leaders with scholarships, mentoring, and leadership training. Google International Student Foundation to learn more. Carrington Group is a family office with a passion for helping business leaders and their families make smart choices and fulfill their highest aspirations. Google Carrington Group Dallas, Texas to learn more.
Securities offered through Regulus Advisors, LLC. Member FINRA/SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Regal Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors are affiliated entities. Carrington Group and this broadcast are independent of Regulus Advisors and Regal Investment Advisors.